The feminism movement didn't unite women, it split women.
I feel totally opposite.
Listen, 50% of young women don't want to have children. They're really preoccupied with making money and materialism.
But we're still looking at a society that is increasingly telling women where they could be better.
But sometimes feminism expects women to be prioritized, and both sexes want the privileges without the responsibilities.
Can I just add, we are producing women and men who are, and I'll tell you what I mean by that. It'll be an interesting discussion.
The content that I have for you guys here today is absolutely perfect. Not only do I have a debate, right? Feminist versus anti-feminist, debating, has feminism gone too far? But then also it's intellectuals intellectually debating. And y'all already know that I love to listen to smart people talk about things because they are both well-versed on each side of the coin. We put those ideas in a tiny little pot, stir them up, and see who comes out victorious. Now, this conversation comes by way of Diary of a CEO. If you guys are unfamiliar with this brother's platform, this brother's channel, absolutely fantastic podcast content. You'll see this video has over 1 million views. They have over 11 million subscribers onto their channel. And yeah, let's just get right into it. Now, the portion that we're going to pick apart here is specific to casual sex, the sexual revolution, as well as hookup culture. So let's get after it. Without further ado.
Just to add to that before you jump in there, despite the general decline in sex, especially amongst younger people, societal acceptance of casual sex has grown quite rapidly. In the UK, approval of casual sex rose from just 10% in 1999 to 42% in 2022.
The hookup culture.
Yeah.
So when you say rules and structure, Erica, I'm really interested in that turn of phrase because, of course, children need rules and structure, but women aren't children.
Well, we're all children. Men are children too. From a psychoanalyst perspective, there's a child in everyone.
Of course, but I think when we're talking...
You can already tell who the feminist is, right? That one.
about rules and grown women, we are really, really in dangerous water.
No, we're not.
Because we are looking at a society that is increasingly closing down on women and telling women where they could do better, be better. If we're looking at an extreme example, we're looking at Iran in 1970s and women in parliament and women walking around as part of the sexual revolution in miniskirts and having a wonderful time. And then you're looking at women in Iran now, you're looking at women in Afghanistan now. Women in Afghanistan now have rules and they have structure. They can't stand near a window. They can't leave the house without a man. They can't they can't use their voice in public. They can't sing. Like anything that says rules to me, I'm immediately like, firstly, our society has plenty of structure. We have a lot of structure. We all have to work to make a living. We are all encouraged into monogamous relationships, and there's a feel that you're successful if you find the one and get married and have 2.4 children. There's so much structure in our lives. There's very little time for relaxation or even considering what we really might want to do. I would be very intrigued to know what you mean by women should have rules.
Yeah.
Ma'am, first off, this likening of rules to the most extreme examples within an Iran is absolutely ridiculous. Oftentimes, I find that these pro-feminists will utilize the most extreme examples in order to try to prove a point. You're fear-mongering. And although I can see that, it's clear that there's a bevy of women that just suck this shit up as if they are currently in a patriarchal regime. There is nobody advocating for women not being able to stand by windows. However, if you say to women, hey, casual sex and hookup culture will not be a benefit to you into the future. It is going to increase your rate of having children early. It's going to increase your STD rate. And it's going to greatly, vastly increase the chances that a man in the future is not going to take you serious for a long-term relationship. You buck up at these things because they feel constraining to you. You want to avoid basic human biology, basic human rules to posture that women should play in a playpen full of no consequences for their actions. It's absurd. Marriage rates have been on the decline. Divorce rates have been on the rise since the introduction of modern feminism, of the birth control pill, and this sexual revolution. Correlation does not always equal causation, but why can we not take a look at those things and determine that they may be related? Rules have always existed to protect both men and women.
What do you mean?
So first of all, I don't agree with you. If I can just say that I don't agree that we are encouraging monogamy. I think we're encouraging polygamy. And I don't mean marriage polygamy. I mean multiple partners. Young people are hooking up. I wrote an article for the Institute for Family Studies on why the statistics on the hookup culture and what it's doing to young people in terms of their mental health. It's causing them to feel more depressed, more anxious, more embarrassed, having more regrets, self-esteem issues. It's got some major implications, and we're talking the statistics say 72 to 82%.
Studies show that hookup culture can negatively affect mental health and self-esteem, but mainly when the encounters are emotionally unfulfilling or driven by pressure rather than personal choice. It is safe to say that hookup culture, by and large, negatively impacts women way more than men. Women are way more emotionally driven than men when it comes to sex. And there's some STDs that they can't even feel, and men can't get pregnant.
72% of young men and 82% of women, young women, are feeling depressed and anxious after these casual sexual encounters. Tinder has an ad that says, "Meet the love of your night." What it does is it takes something so sacred and intimate, and it turns it into something not just casual, but it turns it into something irrelevant, unimportant, and dangerous, if you ask me, emotionally dangerous. And it can be physically dangerous. If you're having casual sex, you could get a sexually transmitted disease. AIDS is still around. I think in a way, what we've taught our kids and what I encourage the young people that I work with is that experiment with sex. Care about the people that you're experimenting with. Find people who care about you and who you care about. So that structure.
Can I just counter about this sort of idyllic option of monogamy? In the United Kingdom, the police receive a domestic abuse-related call every 30 seconds. Yet it's estimated that less than 24% of domestic abuse crime is reported to the police. 1 in 4 women in England and Wales will experience domestic abuse in her lifetime.
Is that including same-sex relationships? Because those have the highest rates of domestic violence and abuse.
On average, nearly 2 women are killed a week in this country. And I know that America has a similar story, but probably worse because there's guns. This is around the world. It's the same in Australia. It is not an either or. It's not that women were so happy and fulfilled in the 1950s because their husbands would go to work. And I mean, watch Mad Men, which is it's a sort of researched idea of how things often were for women then and men, and how, Don Draper would go off into the city. He would have a fulfilling career. Then he would sleep with any number of women and come home to his wife who knew he was having affairs, who could sense it, who could vibe it, who could smell the perfume, and had to just put up with it until she couldn't any longer. Mm. And she was at risk of STDs because he was going out and doing whatever he wanted. The idea that a sort of monogamy is this utopia, and since we've gone into a more hookup culture, I still think there's a hell of a lot of pressure for people to find the right one. Yes, people hook up before they find the right one, but there is pressure to have the rom-com ending. Most people, if they're hooking up, are hooking up to have sexual satisfaction while they are looking for a longer-term relationship. Or they're not, and they're really happy single, and they're finding fulfillment. And that is the spaciousness and the freedom and the autonomy to do that. I love that women can choose that now. Okay. I love that women can say, I'm really happy single. This settling for someone who's not good enough for me, or it doesn't suit me, or it doesn't fit me, doesn't have to happen for me anymore. I can live my full self, and maybe my career is more important to me or fulfilling, or my friendships or my desire for travel. I love that we have options.
Listen, this is not an argument based off of options. I think everybody should live their life how it is that they see fit with whatever information that they have. But the issue is options without identifying consequences. The feminist woman just listened to the anti-feminist woman talk about all of these negative implications for both men and women when it refers to the hookup culture. And in return, she's quoting TV series, completely taking her opinion elsewhere and then rounding it out and about to, I just love that we have the option to do so. This mindset and this lack of accountability within the mindset is absolutely destroying women and society as a whole. Sex is no longer considered cherished or respected, but treated like casual entertainment. And when it's treated like casual entertainment and not that one of its main purposes is to create life, that's how you get the abortion rate at what it is. With last year in New York having more abortions than births within the Black community. Women just seem to forget that they will always be impacted more than men when it comes to this sexual revolution. Why? Because of key biological differences. Men historically have been built for multiple partners. We can't get pregnant, which is one of the reasons why marriage was established by men to protect women to ensure their stability. And today, the protection is just cast aside as feminism pushes promiscuity over commitment, leaving women more vulnerable now than ever because no real man is going to want to deal with a woman that has actively participated in hookup culture. And let's say for the ones that did live a high body count, high promiscuity life, shout out to Cassie. She still found her male white knight simp at the end of the day. But knowing from the type of men that she's come from, she not there for that man anyway. He was just a cleanup man. Quick emergency meeting. I was recently searching for my name online and found way too much personal information, which brought me down this weird rabbit hole of how that could have happened, and found out that there's companies out there called data brokers that will sell your data to marketers, scammers, and even stalkers. And it's a nasty, disgusting feeling knowing that there's bad actors out there selling my information, selling your information for profit. But that's why I'm recommending today's sponsor, Aura. Now, I use Aura to automatically remove my information from these sites and keep my information off. But they do other things as well, such as bank fraud and identity theft alerts, VPN access. But guys, utilize my link down in the description box down below for a 14-day trial. At least see if you've been compromised. Privacy is king in this day and age, and you should know if your information is out there. So again, utilize my link, aura.com/MTR, in the description box down below to try 2 weeks free. That's way more than enough time to see if your personal data has been exposed. Go now.
I want the women watching this to appreciate all the options that they have. All the options that they have. If they want to be single, they want to hook up, if they're looking, but in the meantime having that sexual freedom, I want them to have it all. But if what they want is this monogamy that you're talking about, to find the love of their life and settle down and have 2 children or whatever they want, I want them to have that too.
Deborah, can I ask, do you think that there is a cost to hookup culture and casual sex?
Thank you.
In regards to the implications it has on women, as Erica was implying, psychologically?
Come on.
And is that more adverse in women than men?
I think human beings can suffer from too much choice. Like we know that if you put 800 varieties of jam out on a supermarket shelf, people will buy less jam than if you put out 8.
Yes.
Because they get confused and they just think, oh God, I don't know, none of it then. And they walk away. I think...
Unless... But the difference is that some of those jam options are marketed. They're branded as easy, as cool. They get placed in front of us with music and then supplemented by mainstream media down to daytime talk shows, down to their funky ass little podcasts where they seem to always have some type of sex toy that they advertise within it. But since she's utilizing analogies, let's go there. You guys know how popular of a product cigarettes were before they reached the Surgeon General's warning? Hookup culture and the way that modern day feminism advertise it is promoting cigarettes without the Surgeon General's warning. I'll be the Surgeon General. And this is coming from a man who greatly benefited from the hookup culture. I had a lot of fun, you heard? Let's go.
The fact that we have young people sitting in a bar on a hinge date, and while that person goes to the bar, they're like, what else is out there? I think that's bad for human beings. Mm-hmm. I think that is bad for women, for men, for non-binary people. That's bad for everybody.
But the sort of sacredness, Erica was alluding to a sacredness of sex itself.
Yes, I think that is not a thing, that we are somehow finding women find sex more sacred than men.
But I didn't say that women find it. I think it's sacred for men and women. But
yeah. So you were speaking to sort of sacredness to it. And I know, Louise, in your work, you've talked about how there's different implications for men and women as it relates to casual sex.
So I think that hookup culture basically is better suited to the average preferences of men than of women. So the average preferences of men are more likely to be towards the having lots of partners, jumping into bed really quickly, into the spectrum, basically. And this is what psychologists call sociosexuality. So men are generally more unrestricted in their sociosexuality than are women. And hookup culture favors the highly sociosexual. And actually, you can see this if you look at campus dating culture.
I was just about to say this. You go and you walk up to 50 women up on a campus of one guy and be like, listen, let's go back to my room and let's go shag. How many of those women going to say yes? Not a lot. I would say less than 5%. Well, on college campuses nowadays, let's say less than 15%. You switch that around. You have, a smooth, mild baddie. Let's say like an 8 walk up to 50 men on a college campus. How many men you think is going to say yes? Like 90%, 95%, depending upon the campus.
And sexual cultures, which are interesting because in a way, university campuses are almost a closed environment. You've got all these young, horny people hanging out, not very much to do, and like interacting with one another. And on campuses which have more men than women, so the women are the scarcer resource, basically, assuming everyone's heterosexual, right? They tend to have more conservative sexual cultures, so more monogamy, less hooking up, people wait longer to have sex, etc. On campuses where there are fewer men and more women, which increasingly is true of all universities, actually,
60
because
to 40,
exactly, you have the opposite. You have more hookup culture because basically the men are the scarce resource and they can set the terms. And
this is so important to understand. So when you have men as a scarcer resource than women, well, then the women, having less options, give into more so what the male wants, which is more non-committal, casual encounters.
men prefer more hookup culture. There are obviously exceptions, this is all true, but at the population level, I think that's really good evidence that actually women en masse don't like hookup culture and are actually engaging with it because they sort of have to.
What you're talking about there is very young women who have just left home. It's their first exploration into sex.
Don't you, baby?
Now, if you ask a 32-year-old woman in London who knows her body, who knows her preferences, who knows what kind of man turns her on, who can talk about these things and communicate, and you ask her, do you regret that hookup? She'll be like, no, I worked really hard this week. I was literally looking forward to it, and it was wonderful. If you ask that same woman, do you regret any of the hookups you had when you were a fresher? She'll be like, oh my God, I didn't know myself. I didn't know how to ask what I wanted. The boys were terrible at it because they didn't know themselves. I don't think universities are a great place to get this information because that is when you are literally just exploring and going, is this anything? And we're all too embarrassed to say what we want or to say how that we like, oh. So you've got to put into that mix. Boys are told, you got to get laid. You got to get laid. Otherwise, you're not cool. Young women are told, you don't want too high a body count. You're going to get slut shamed. So you're talking about 18-year-olds who don't know themselves yet, and you're saying when the men are the scarcer resource, it's one way, women another way. That is exactly what I would expect to see.
You're talking about 18-year-olds that don't know themselves yet.
So she's fighting for and proud of the choice of options, cool. But then disqualifies a microcosm of a society, a college campus, to demonstrate that there are regrets within hookup culture. So within her inability to answer what are the consequences of hookup culture, she actually just answered it right there. Meanwhile, the young lady that went through all of this regret and trauma, relationship trauma within her 20s, you might get to her in her late 20s, early 30s, and you just like, I can't really touch this seriously with a 20-foot pole. But non-committal situationship, oh yeah, we can do that all day. Since the beginning of times.
In our sexual culture where yes, there's some structure. Yes, there are some rules, but we are much, much more sexually, not just liberal, but even libertine than, say, the sexual culture of our grandparents or whatever. I think everyone ought to be able to agree on that. There clearly is a change now in the sexual culture from previous generations, and it's mostly to do with the pill, as I argue. But the expectation is kind of, as you say, that you just have to figure it out. Like, there isn't a very clear template. Yes, maybe there isn't. I think that Deborah, you're actually right that most people do in the end aspire to monogamy and having children and everything. But there's also an expectation that you're supposed to experiment a bit in the meantime, and it's kind of actually weird to be a virgin on your wedding night. And I think that, yes, I mean, girls have to tread this really difficult tightrope where on the one hand they are at risk of slut shaming, but they're also at risk of being called frigid. They are much, much more at risk, actually, of being called frigid than in previous generations.
What's wrong with frigid?
I mean, the idea that we can escape from social judgment around our sexual choices is probably not realistic. I think that basically that's what humans are like. We do just tend to be judgmental about this. But anyway, I don't think it's very wise to subject girls to this experience, is how I would put it. To say that you have to go through the hookup culture.
I know people who are opting out. I know young people who are absolutely opting out. They're not no freedom at all.
I'm going to agree with her and say freedom has become a pressure. There's become a societal pressure to be free. So
I know many young people who are opting out of the apps.
Okay, I'm a therapist, and I see so many young people, and I give lectures, and people come up to me. So I can say, and I write books about adolescence, and I'm going to say that mostly the term hookup culture is used between 15 and 30. So you're correct in saying a 32-year-old woman should have the right to have sex with whoever the hell she wants to have sex with. And I'm right there with you. She should have choice, whatever. But young women, young men who are developing emotionally, mentally,
should not have the right.
No. That's
they shouldn't have the right.
Can I finish?
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, sorry. So you interrupted, so I didn't get to finish.
I'm so sorry.
Okay. So they're more vulnerable. They are more vulnerable emotionally to what the hookup culture does to them. There's a lot of research to say that it causes loneliness, depression, anxiety,
emptiness,
tons of regret, embarrassment, shame, self-esteem issues. And so, of course, we want freedom. In fact, I'm probably more in agreement with you on most things than you think. But in this, I say that freedom can become its own prison. So if you think about the early feminists, the really early feminists, Mary Wollstonecraft, Mary Shelley, those women were fighting patriarchy. They were fighting a system.
It's a lot different.
That said they had to be a certain way. So of course I don't accept what Iran does to women. I mean, that, but what's happened is if the pendulum swings too far, you have a different kind of patriarchy on the other side. We say the extreme left and the extreme right actually meet in the middle. And so have we just we never want to take choice away. The idea of taking choice away from women to have sex with whoever they want to have sex with, that's not the point of this. It's, have we created a society which pressures young women in its own way to be promiscuous, to have lots of experiences. It's not all glorious, freedom. It is glorious, but it's also not all glorious. And it can be a pressure on young people to get rid of their virginity, to have lots of sexual experiences. And it's not all it's cracked up to be for them. It really isn't. In terms of their mental health, again, they are more, we say, 9 to 25, really 27 in young men, is the second critical period of brain development, where they are very susceptible to their relational experiences and their environment. And so in that period of development, which is mostly what we use the term hookup culture for, it's in that very young developmental period. It's not just in college, it's throughout their 20s, until that woman becomes 32. That's a very vulnerable brain. And so we have created a culture that confuses that brain, that offers too many choices, that pressures them into having multiple partners and many experiences, and leaves them feeling empty and lonely.
She just absolutely mic dropped on the end of that, and there's about 2 hours to go left in this conversation. Guys, I'm gonna leave a link to it down in the description box down below in case you want to conclude this all out. Shit, I might actually go live and just review like this whole thing so we can all have a formal discussion into all of these different topics. But I'm really appreciative of the way that she just described that because, you know, I'm a product of the culture as well. But I think that the real lesson here is that as long as we are not having conversations like this, we will slowly watch society unravel because we allow delusion to take place of discipline. We have glamorized freedom with no accountability. We've led people to believe that they can literally have it all, consequence-free. We've let feelings overrun structure. And worse, we've stopped telling the truth out loud. All right, guys, I'm gonna end this conversation right here. Let me know what you think down in the comment box down below. Do you agree with my points of positions that have been made here from any of the participants on the panel or even myself? If you do or do not, leave me a timestamp down below so we can have a conversation about it. Hopefully you've enjoyed your stay here today. And if so, make sure that you hit on that subscribe button, all right? Until next time, YouTube. Peace!
She belongs to the street.
Girl, don't hold my hand. You a mattress actress on the OnlyFans. Get your money, girl, but damn, how is that your only plan? What you gonna do when you get too old to strip and dance? Get up out your echo chamber screaming period and yes. You a low down dirty woman if you try to get knocked up by a high value man.